everyone, welcome to Twin Talks, where we're twins and we talk about books that we read. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not. This week they're not the same, and we have opinions.
And what are we reading this week, Twin?
This week we're reading Dracula and On the Road. I picked On the Road because I wanted to read it.
And I picked Dracula because I did not want to read On the Road because it's an awful book. And Dracula sounded like a bunch of fun.
And I had already read Dracula, and it is fun,
So, let's get started, shall we?
Sure. So we said we're going to start with On the Road, yeah?
Yeah, let's start with that book. How'd it go? What was it about?
So can I explain why I picked it first?
Yes, you can.
So I really, really have always wanted to read it because, it's just like one of those hipster books where like everyone's like, oh, you read Kerouac? And you're like, yeah. But I never have. Because I've read some of his poetry actually, and it's not great, but it's better than On the Road. And then I was a history minor for a while, for those of you who don't know that, which is everyone, except for you. I was a history minor for a little while, and I took a history class with this professor who was really awesome. But it was an American history class from like Reconstruction to now. So we didn't really get past Vietnam, which is fine because whatever. We know what happens after Vietnam. Like life sucks.
And then you die.
Yeah, but mostly we learn about history and stuff. Which is really fun. Be a history major if you can. Except you'll never have a job, so maybe don't. But it's fun.
Jack.
Well, Jack is the exception to the rule.
Sorry to all the history majors listening in the future.
Okay, but history is my second favorite subject, and I really, really love being a history minor. But anyway, so our professor was this really cool guy, and we were learning about the 40s and the 50s, and he was like, does anyone know Jack Kerouac? And I didn't raise my hand because I was the only non-major in the class. And I didn't want to be that person. So I didn't raise my hand. Just kind of the story of my life, really. And because everyone knows Jack Kerouac. So I thought. But apparently, no one in our class knew except for me. But I didn't say anything anyway. So our teacher was explaining On the Road. And he's like, it's one of the best books I've ever read. And I get out of class. I'm walking with my friends to our car. And they're like, Emily, you knew who Jack Kerouac was, why didn't you raise your hand? And I was like, because On the Road is a terrible, terrible book. And Jack Kerouac sucks. Not that I had read On the Road at that point in time. But I knew the statement to be true. And they were like, how do you know that? I was like, because On the Road is a book that only white middle-aged men read because in the 70s they were like, wow, the beats are cool. Which is, yeah, so it's true. That's the only people who like On the Road. Anyway, so my teacher was super into it. I didn't say anything. And then we take the test, and Jack Kerouac is on the test. And I wrote on my test in big capital letters, no, next to his name. That wasn't an idea. So I didn't want to. I have strong opinions. I didn't think anything of it. I just did it. And then when he had graded the test and came back the next week, he was like, whose test is this? And I was late to class, of course. So I wasn't there to raise my hand and say me. But my friend Jack did for me.
Of course Jack did.
Yeah, she really, really hates Kerouac. She's an English major. And my teacher was like, oh, this is hilarious. 5 extra credit points. Right? So I walked into class and he was like, thanks for showing up late. And I was like, hey, at least I showed up at all. And I sat down in my chair. And he was like, why didn't you tell us you knew who Jack Kerouac was? And I was like, because I told him what I just told you. I'm the only non-major in this class. And I didn't want to be a know-it-all. And he was like, and you don't like Jack Kerouac? I was like, no, sir. I don't think he's very good. He was like, all right, noted. And that was the end of that. Except that I had gotten 4 extra credit points, and I had gotten a 95 on the test. So I got 100%. I was the only person in the class to get 100% on a test that entire semester. And I was the only non-history major in that class, just saying.
So you chose this book because
it got me 100% on a test. A very hard test.
So that's the entire reason.
It was a very long story for, yeah. I never read it and I wanted to do justice. Also, I was curious. There's a line in a song by the 1975 that quotes it, or really says it, references it.
Huh.
And then I thought my dad would have read it. My dad is surprisingly literary. And he has read it, and I told him I was going to read it, and he said it's terrible. And the only reason people were excited about it because it has a lot of sex in it, and that wasn't a thing that anyone had ever read in a book before.
Oh, sounds like something we know in modern times.
Right? But so my dad said not to read it, and my dad is really awkward when talking about sex stuff. But he said it has a lot of sex in it, and that's the only reason why people read it. That's the only reason why I read it. He said, not me. Not myself. And I was like, okay, Dad, that was awkward. And I read it anyway, and it was bad.
So does it have a lot of sex in it?
I mean, yeah, I guess, for like a literary thing. But for the most part, On the Road is like fan fiction of Jack Kerouac's life.
What?
He went on this road trip with a bunch of other popular beat writers in the 40s.
Okay.
And he like journaled. And then a couple years later, he wrote it all down, and he changed all his friends' names and his own. And yeah.
So that's the whole story. It's him on this road trip with these friends.
Yeah, going out west.
So do they have sex with each other, or do they...
No.
So where does the sex come
from? A lot
from?
of random women.
Ah.
But, it's very quotable. I liked it in that respect. I can see why people like it. If you're not a literary scholar and you're gonna read a book because you think it's what high literature should be, I imagine On the Road would be one of those. If that makes sense.
It makes sense, but there's so much better, like, good classic books that you can read and still have that, like, snobby opinion. Shakespeare's a good point, even though I'm not a huge fan of most Shakespeare's.
No, trash. My main man
I said Shakespeare's good, even though I don't like a lot of him.
For shame.
I really like Catcher in the Rye, which we are reading later on. You can't make that face. You've never read it.
It's true. That's why we're doing this. So I can make that face on good authority.
That is true. You will probably hate it, knowing you. Yeah. But it's definitely one of my favorite books. You are not allowed to hate To Kill a Mockingbird.
I don't think I'll hate To Kill a Mockingbird. I think I'll like To Kill a Mockingbird. I haven't read that one either.
And it's also on our list. Eventually.
We're giving them away. We're spoilers.
The spoilers. Okay, we won't talk about any more books we're doing. Not even the fun ones.
Oh, I'm so pumped.
Oh, me too. I'm excited for our next one.
Yep. It'll be good.
I'm probably going to read the entire series again, like TBH.
We'll see where I get.
Okay, so anything else about On the Road? Maybe your favorite quote or scene or character?
So my favorite character, I think, was just the narrator, because I went into it knowing that it was like, it was him.
Mm-hmm.
But his name is Sal Paradise.
Sal Paradise.
Dean Moriarty.
Oh, a Moriarty.
Uh-huh. And it's like jazzy. I don't know. Honestly, I think you might like it.
It does not sound like a book I like. You know how I feel about old white men and pretentious writing.
Yeah, that's all this is. It's like vaguely racist.
Oh, yay. Just what I want to read.
Or like casually racist.
Even better. By the way, if you didn't know, I don't know if this actually mentioned, I'm black, so racism.
I'm not.
Not a thing that I enjoy to read about. Though oddly, in a lot of literature.
Okay, oddly in every literature, depending on what you choose to read it as.
True. There's a lot of metaphors for racism, because it's just that one of those big topics.
Actually, we're going to talk about this in Dracula.
We're going to talk about racism in Dracula?
Yep. Yes, we are.
Okay, so we're just going to jump right into Dracula, huh?
Yes, I want to talk about Dracula. Oh, I just hit my knee on my desk. God.
Okay, so I guess since you said why you chose On the Road, I guess it's only fair that I explained why I chose Dracula. So I actually watched this kind of like video summary series on YouTube called Overly Sarcastic Productions. They're super funny. Go check them out. They cover a lot of like myths and like classic literatures, and she does like her own drawings over it. And one Halloween, she posted Dracula, and she said it was a really good book, and it's, you know, the basis of all our vampire kind of lore, like one of the big ones, and kind of like what made vampires quote unquote sexy. So I'm getting to that. Me loving vampires for the longest part of my life, actually forever, still now, vampires all the way. Don't shake your head at me.
But I'm shaking my head in disappointment.
Okay, werewolves are lame. Vampires are king.
Not into either of them.
Is it Nancy's into werewolves then? My bad.
Maybe.
I think so. Anyway, I digress. So, of course, I'm like, you know what? I've never read Dracula. I'm not going to be one of those people who love vampires and never read Dracula. So, Twin had read it for her horror class that she took last semester.
Yes. It was very cool. Horror and fiction. We're going to talk about it a little bit. I'm going to talk about it in the upcoming discussions about Dracula, because I have like thoughts. I studied it in the class, so I have like
actual academic opinions.
Yeah.
But I don't. I just read it for fun, and I liked it. But my issue is that I knew what was going to happen, and so the plot is just so slow when you know it's going to happen, which most people have a general idea of how the story will go. And so getting from point A to B takes forever and a day.
I agree.
But as it is, it's really good at revealing stuff very slowly.
Pacing.
And definitely builds suspense per every diary entry. Oh, I should explain that. This story is told through like journals, diary entries, I think maybe a couple like newspaper clippings here and there.
Mm-hmm. The official term for that is an epistolary novel, because it's technically the term that covers books that are made up of like letters, emails. You'll see modern epistolary novels are emails and IMs. I think landlines.
Yes.
Or attachments. Sorry.
Attachments.
By Rainbow Rowell. How do you say it?
Rainbow Rowell.
Yeah, that's a modern epistolary novel. Frankenstein is also an epistolary novel, I think. I think it's described as an epistolary novel.
Is it? I read it. I don't remember it being.
I might be getting that wrong. Dangerous Liaisons. I don't know if anyone in the world has actually read that. It's a movie.
I'm like, isn't it a movie?
It's a movie with young Keanu Reeves.
Ooh, Keanu Reeves.
Yes, actually Peter Capaldi's in it too.
Oh.
And Uma Thurman.
Uma Thurman. I love Uma Thurman too. Anyway, so yes, it's an epistolary novel, and it has some very interesting characters. Mm-hmm. Like, to be completely honest with every one of you, Mina Harker, without her, this book would have fallen apart. These men are so stupid. Besides Van Helsing. Van Helsing helps a lot, but Mina Harker saves all of their asses time and time again and gets all the shit done.
I have thoughts.
Okay, what thoughts do you have?
So, I'm a nerd, and I actually, like, really thrive on, like, literary criticism and, like, writing of that nature. Sorry, I, like, hiccuped in the middle of that. And so, in my edition of Dracula, it's the Barnes & Noble Classics edition that I bought literally years ago, because I always intended to read Dracula.
Wow, that's huge in comparison to mine.
I know. Yeah. Because in the beginning here, it has a couple of pieces of, like, it's technically the introduction by, like, an editor, but it's essentially just an essay.
Oh, it's like, okay.
And so it talks a little bit about like the homoeroticism in vampire tales in general.
Okay.
Because the whole vampire like mythos, one of the very first recorded vampire novels was called Carmilla, and it was like lesbian vampires, and it's pretty cool. So I haven't read it, obviously. And so you can see like a lot of sexuality reflected in vampires, and so in Dracula, it was written in Victorian England, right? So we talked in my class, actually I talked about in my class, how you can see a lot of Victorian like hang-ups reflected in the writing of the time. And
That is definitely true. We have the fainting lady disease.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the poor chauvinistic kind of, we'll protect you, Mina. Your poor soul can't handle this. You're too frail.
Mm-hmm. And the sort of shaming of Lucy for being this open, sexualized individual after when she's in the process of becoming a vampire. And they're like, she's evil. We cannot let her around the children. Oh, because she's got some pink in her cheeks.
I thought it was more of that she was just so frail, at least from my version of reading it, not having read this essay about the overt sexuality, even though I do think there's definitely something going on between Mina and Lucy, or something could be read that something was going on between them, because they were very affectionate towards each other, which also could just be, the women are so close to their female friends ideas of the Victorian mindset.
You also, like, knowing about the lesbian vampire precursor to Dracula, you're kind of like, oh, of course. Sure. And also, there's the idea that Dracula is supposed to be seducing Mina through Lucy. So there's that.
Yeah.
I imagine if you were just reading it for fun, this probably wouldn't have even crossed your mind.
No, not at all. Let me tell you all, no. I mean, there's some, like, I've definitely wrote, like, some lines in my book, like, oh, that's gay, or that's, like, sort of gay.
Me, always.
But mainly it's, you're going through the book, and you're reading these letters, and you get this whole sense that, oh, Lucy's so pretty and gorgeous, and they spend hours, it seems like, talking about how pretty this woman is. Even when she dies, they spend, like, a long time talking about her corpse and how pretty it is in her coffin, before they decapitate her. But, so when she falls ill, and they kind of, like, hoard her in a room, I took it more as they're, the whole, we have to protect her, keep her kept away from all the evils of the world, and how they're all falling hand and feet over to serve her. And we have 3 love interests for this one chick. Mm-hmm. And not to mention, she chooses the boring one of all of them. I mean, not that I would choose the one where, he's probably the best option. That he's the most boring, but the other options are this Texas American, like a Texan.
I'm pretty sure that's how British people think all Americans are.
But he doesn't speak like a Texan at all. He speaks more of like a deep South kind of guy.
Oh, so even worse. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry for all our Southern people.
Whoops.
Off of Southern stereotypes for British people.
And it's like old racist Southern, so if you're listening to this and you're offended, oh well.
Sorry, not sorry.
And the other option is a mental ward doctor who has some crazy times.
He, like, kind of psychoanalyzes her in the story, and he's like, wow, she has all these issues. It's the same reason why you never want to date a psych major.
Says the person who's dated a psych major.
I've dated 3 psych majors. Oh,
who's the third one?
Well, date is a loose term for that last one.
Mango and Steven, and...
Let's not tell the internet.
Oh, you think they're gonna find this?
I don't know.
Anyway, her dating history aside,
it's probably gonna be the butt of several jokes.
Don't date a psych major, and don't date someone who's, in charge of a mental ward. I mean, it's just, he goes through some bad news. Like that, do we ever get his name? I think we do, but I'm awful with names. The
It's been quite a while. This was one of the first books we read this past semester. So.
it
I also took 7 classes this past semester for those listening.
you know
7.
you live. You got your degree.
Yeah, I got an email yesterday or the day before that confirmed that my degree was processed.
Hey,
I passed all my classes.
good for you. You'll be getting your degree in the mail. Hopefully not folded or anything.
With my luck, my name will be misspelled or something.
You know, my name's misspelled on my credit card, so...
Maybe get that one fixed.
Eventually. I mean, it's not to the point where you can notice it. They just, like, switched 1 letters in my last name, because you know everyone fucks that up.
There's not that many letters.
I know. Psh, you're telling me. It sounds exactly like how it's spelled.
Yeah, that's dumb.
Yeah, people get it wrong all the time.
Yeah.
Anyway, so back to the mental ward patient. The
doctor, yeah.
He's not the doctor. No, the doctor's mental ward patient. The one he kind of watches over that does all this freaky stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like first he wants he wants flies. And then he wants birds to eat the flies. No, then he got spiders to eat the flies. And then he wanted birds to eat the spiders. And he wanted a cat to eat the birds. But the doctor wouldn't give him a cat, so he threw a hissy fit. And then he ate the birds himself. And it was really weird. And he's like this connection to Dracula before we know Dracula's all this like supernatural character.
I was just gonna tell you, he's like Dracula's thrall or whatever.
Yeah.
He's a little person. I'm not a vampire person. I don't know what you call that.
Thrall is a proper term. Congratulations.
Alright. I'm proud of myself.
So yes, he shares a connection with Dracula, and every time Dracula does something like vaguely creepy around to like Mina or Lucy, something goes on with the mental ward patient. And not Jonathan, Seward? What's his name? Is his name also John?
Every white man is named John.
I mean, not after a certain point in England.
Yes, then they all start going by Jack.
Anyway, that dude, he documents it every time. He's like, what is going on? Which is pretty much every male character besides Van Helsing. They're like, what's going on? And then Van Helsing does a serious face from his...
Okay, so before having read Dracula, the only like Dracula-esque movie I'd seen was the 2004 version called Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman as in the titular role. And so I thought Van Helsing was going to be some young, handsome man. But Van Helsing is no such thing.
No, Van Helsing is a foreigner from... is he Swedish?
Genuinely no clue.
All I know is every time he talks, he has like these mixed up metaphors and kind of sounds like a bumbling idiot all the time. Like almost all next to his dialogues, I put like, what the fuck are you trying to say to me? Like, is this even English anymore? But then again, I wrote the same next to Quincy's, when he just kind of started babbling in American.
America.
Which, obviously Stoker's never talked to an American in his life, or probably anyone outside of where he's from, ever.
That might not be true. That might not be historical. But I'm not going to fact check you. Actually, no, never mind.
I said might not. Or he's just extremely racist and hates everyone.
Okay, can I talk about this?
Yes,
okay.
Talk about your racism.
So, it's actually not quite racism. I mean, it is, but it's under the form of Orientalism.
Okay, go for it.
So Orientalism is like fear of Eastern culture, not necessarily like Asian, but like
East
of what we would call Western culture, so like east of England, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So you have any of your like Eastern Europeans, so German, Hungarian, Hungarian's not Eastern, um, like Ukrainian, that kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing, right? Slovakian,
Romanian, where the story
exactly.
starts.
That's where I was going. So you have essentially a British man, right? Jonathan Harker. I keep
Jonathan
wanting to
Harker,
call it
yes.
Harkness, like Jack Harkness,
I d-
Captain Doctor Who.
oh, yes.
All right, there we go. We got there. So he's this foreigner, and he's going into this foreign land where they're already very suspicious of everything that happens there. And you have this wealthy Count Dracula, who's trying to establish himself in London, right?
Mm-hmm.
And essentially, they do everything they can to make sure he doesn't establish himself in London, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's under the pretense of like, oh, he's a vampire, so like can't have him making more vampires in London. But it's essentially spreading the Eastern European sort of culture into England. It's a form of Orientalism. He's even described as, hold on, you can't see it. My book is all tabbed up because I like legit read it. I legit read some of it.
The tab's up like a quarter way in.
Yeah. But like the little booklet of tabs is still in there. I stopped reading. Hold on. Coffins. I saw I'm not really great at this whole tab thing. I never label them unless I never know where anything is.
Well, while you're looking at that, I'll kind of describe how Dracula looks and acts. So when we first meet Dracula, he's this kind of like oddball character where the main character's a little put off by him. Like he has hairy palms. He has this like weird, scringly white beard. And he has bad breath, apparently. And Jonathan Harker, our first narrator, is kind of grossed out and weirded out by him because he's just, like, so friendly and so in his face. Like, there's no other people in this house besides Jonathan and Dracula. So Dracula's doing everything for him, and Jonathan's kind of like, please get away from me and leave me alone. But he's there when he wakes up. He's there all the time, and Dracula basically kidnaps Jonathan and like keeps him captive in his house with under the pretense of I'm just being a good host. And then Jonathan starts noticing all the creepy shit going on, like how Dracula crawls down the walls from his window like a lizard or a spider.
Oh, I marked that in my book and I was like, this is terrifying.
See, my biggest issue with that is once Jonathan saw that, he didn't get the hell out of there. He just went like, oh, I'm gonna go back to bed. Versus any other person in modern times would be like, nah, I'm out. I would have been out like the first night after he told me, oh, just stick around. I'll help you. There's no other servants around. Just like,
He also compares the beginning of his story to the beginning of the Arabian Nights story.
Oh, yes, he does.
I'm literally flipping through the book in front of me, trying to find my notes. But I can't find it. But it's essentially othering someone from the East, Orientalism, usually described in some like vaguely racist kind of way. Dracula, it's not as bad as some other pieces I've read. That
for sure.
But it's definitely a theme.
It definitely can be interpreted as a theme. But let's define that. It can be interpreted as such because at its core it is still a horror novel and the supernatural element is still very much there as it's like slowly given to you to connect the pieces.
'Tis a metaphor, my dear.
Always.
Hold on. Keep talking. I have to find another book.
Oh, God.
Anyway, the
Anyways,
life of a literary scholar.
as she goes and finds this book, as I was saying, the horror element's very, very prominent in this book. And if it probably does it better than some of the most modern horror stories I've read, in that the suspense is at every page. And you're like, what the fuck are you doing? Get out of there. Stop staring like an idiot. Versus most modern horror kind of lack that, in my opinion. Just kind of like how I feel about horror movies today. They're all like slasher porn rather than true suspense, which Dracula would be. That being said, Dracula can't be translated into a movie. At least, not in a way that can contain its literary integrity.
I think that's true for every book. In my horror fiction class, we talked a lot about how the definition of horror has changed over time. So Dracula was one of the earlier pieces we read, but we started with a book called The Monk. And it's about a monk who, like, really viciously rapes a girl and, like, kills people, and it's, like, intense. And you're like, whoa. This is wild. I didn't read most of that one either. But then we did Dracula. I don't know if Dracula was second, but it was there. We did Frankenstein. Oh no, we did Frankenstein after The Monk, I think.
And then
Poe. We did Lovecraft. We did all of that, and we tried to go in like sequential order.
Is Lovecraft really considered horror? Isn't he more like the weird sci-fi horror-esque?
Okay, Lovecraft was truly terrifying.
Really?
Yeah.
I've never read Lovecraft.
Rats in the walls. Oh my god, gave me nightmares. Because I have a cat, and like in that, there's like rat humans underground, but they're not really there.
Rat people! We're rats! To all my D&D nerds out there.
Oh. But then, so they're in the book, the cat is like crying at the wall for no reason. And if you're a cat owner, sometimes cats just do that. And so my cat was doing that shortly after I read that, and I was like, oh shit. And cannibals. That was it.
Oh god.
It was insane, and I was terrified.
I'm definitely have to pick up some Lovecraft. I have not read him.
He's not that great either. He's also kind of racist.
Aren't they all? I mean, Lewis Carroll is a pedophile.
All right.
They all have their issues.
Yeah, C.S. Lewis was a misogynist.
Yeah, I believe it.
Anyway, so what else did we do? Oh, we did Neil Gaiman last. Did I say Poe? We did Poe.
Yeah.
I hate Edgar Allan Poe.
I love Edgar Allan Poe.
So much.
So much.
We did some other things that I don't remember because I honestly didn't read that much. 7 classes, everyone. 7. But it was pretty good. Lovecraft was genuinely, I was kind of surprised I enjoyed it. Better than Poe, for sure. But we were talking about Dracula, and I don't remember what I was saying. Oh, horror. Okay. Sorry. Oh, we read Psycho too. We read that one. That was the only one I read start to finish for that class because it was short. It was also very, very good.
I will have to pick that one up because I've never actually seen the movie Psycho, so I think it'd be kind of fun.
I'll put it in a box. Do you want it? The box is open.
Sure. Put it in the box, with my textbook.
Hey, I meant to bring it to you.
I know, and you didn't show up.
It was in my backpack. I took it out of my backpack. I took my backpack to the zoo yesterday.
Okay, put it in your backpack to when you're coming to visit me next. We're getting way off topic.
Yeah.
Anyway.
What was I saying?
Horror and Dracula.
Horror has changed. So when these pieces were published, they had different meanings of what was scary. So when The Monk was published, it was scariest for someone of the clergy to be corrupt, right? And so that was the point of that one. People were like, Legas. Wow. In Dracula, it's the idea that something would get as far as London before it was stopped, Like that something could invade and was working on it and was able to corrupt the women who work with the children, who then were corrupted by proxy, I would say. So something like that. So, Frankenstein, it was that, monsters. I don't really remember where I was going with that, but that's the point of what I was saying. Horror is very different and very relative, depending on the reader, too. So, like, sure, we don't think Dracula is scary, but someone else in the world might. Or, sure, we don't think, Lovecraft is scary, though it is. Someone else might. It's very relative based on the reader. So, where I think you're correct in that modern horror is all like slasher stuff. I also think horror encapsulates like thrillers, and I think we've come a long way in that department. Though I'm really not into those either.
I think thriller and horror sometimes go together in the fact that they both kind of have this like built-in suspense. But when I think thriller, I think of the movie Seven, which you haven't seen.
Yeah, because I couldn't find it.
Because I couldn't find it. But for those of you who have seen it, you guys know what I'm talking about. It's this detective kind of movie where you're trying to figure out the killer. Versus, I think horror that does a good suspense as The Conjuring, where everything just kind of like builds and builds and builds. And there's some jump scares, yes, but most of it's just kind of like this eeriness feeling built upon the music, the scenery, and all that.
I don't know. If I was a Victorian lady, I'm pretty sure I would have been clutching my pearls for Dracula.
Oh, for sure. This book probably was terrifying, and if I didn't know anything about Dracula and know how it ended, I would enjoy it 10 times more than I already did.
So, I read this book before I read Dracula, alright? Okay, correction. I started this book before I read Dracula. And it's called Anno Dracula. And what it is it's a twist on the tale of Dracula that has a world where Van Helsing failed, and Dracula made it to London, married Queen Victoria. I think he killed Prince Philip or King Philip or whatever. No, Albert. Sorry, Prince Albert. Wrong queen. Prince Albert. And so he marries Victoria and creates like a legion of vampire people, and they just like live within Victorian England. And it's really cool. And the first one is like a vampire Jack the Ripper, kind of. It's very, very good. The second one, I really want to read the second one more than I want to finish the first one. It's about World War One, which I had this argument with my sister yesterday. Twin knows this opinion, I think, is the most exciting war conflict in history. And you can fight me.
You know what?
My sister tried to yesterday.
I let you have, but I am also part of the World War II will always be sexy.
Jack Bowman.
Yes, I prefer World War II just because I like the complexity of the technology, the tragedies going on. I know the new technology, blah, 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 makes World War I more exciting, etc., etc. It's my opinion. We'll leave it at that.
The vibe. Whatever. World War II wouldn't have been possible without World War I, and that's...
I also like that about World War II, that it is a continuation of the first bullshit World War, which is a result of the colonization of Africa, but let's not turn this into a history lesson.
That was an interesting topic that you just brought to my attention. And I would love to continue to have a historical conversation. Are you kidding me? And I agree. I think that's an interesting way of putting it. I'm gonna think about it. Anyway, Anno Dracula. That's Anno Dracula by Kim Newman. You should all read it. It's really good. It's like historical fiction but vampires.
Sounds right up my alley. Well, I'm not really a historical fiction fan, but vampires. I'm always a vampire fan.
And the second one is like World War I style fighter pilots, but vampires. And that's why I really want to read the second one.
I would see why. Okay, but I think that's all the time we have for this time, guys. So do you want to tell them what we're reading next week? It's one of my favorites.
I think you should tell them.
Okay, so we are reading All for the Game by Norris Sakovic, which is this young adult novel, sports novel, I should say.
Series.
It is a series. Uh-oh, hold up. as I was saying, it is a sports novel series. All for the Game is the first book. It's called no, All for the Game is a series, and then The Foxhole Court is the first book. It is a trilogy, and they're relatively short, and I believe the first book is free on Amazon.
I think right now they're only available in ebook.
No, they're you can buy a print.
From her, though, not in a store.
Yeah, it's not in a store. She's a self-published author, so you can buy it off Amazon in print.
That's pretty cool.
So that is the book we are going to be talking about next week. It is definitely one of my favorites and probably my top current obsession.
I got her into it. Thank you. Thank you. I'll take the credit for that.
You did. You did. Okay. But like I said, that's all the time we have for you guys today. We'll see you next week with All for the Game. Bye, everyone.
Bye.